Hi, everyone. You are now tuning in to another episode of Conversations with Filmmakers podcast. Our special guest today is screenwriter and producer Doug Shaffer, whose recent project, 5,000 Blankets, was released by Sony. We hope you enjoy part one of this two-part discussion. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Vonti McCrae, and we are doing our podcast interview today, and it is Conversations with Producers. Our first guest up today is Mr. Doug Shaffer, and we will go right into the questioning and everything. It's so happy that you were able to join us today, Doug.
Thank you. Really looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm very excited. So can you start with letting us know what is your name, position, and how long you have been in the media industry?
My name is Doug Shaffer. I'm a producer. I've been working regularly since 2010,
Wow.
producing films. So for like now, I guess it's like 13 years. Yeah.
Wow, that's exciting.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so can you elaborate on the life of a producer? Like, give us a breakdown of what your daily life could be as you're doing, trying to get these TV and film projects out there.
Well, now, I've been doing this for a while. So my job of what I do now is kind of different from what I did 10 years ago, because now I'm out on my own. So
Mhm.
my job is right now trying to stay in communication with different streamers and studios that I have relationships with, trying to come up with projects that suit their audience. So I will look for stories, I will look for completed scripts, books, things of that nature that I think could fit their specific audience. There's also instances with some of these streamers where they might have a script and everything already ready, and then they would want me to produce it. But mostly I've been more on the creative side, which means starting the project, getting the project agreed upon, and then making the film. So you got to have multiple balls in the air. So I will
Mhm.
have multiple projects, and just knowing that I don't know which one's going to get going first. That's kind of how you do it. You try to you try to maintain something. But most of the time is just working with writers and pitching some of the streamers on different ideas and scripts and things like that.
And can you tell us a little bit, like some of those companies that you work with, maybe some of the studios and everything that you've tried to, pitch your content to?
Well, I just did a movie for Sony, Sony Affirm. Affirm Films is the faith and family arm of Sony. I did a movie with them a year ago, and I'm looking to do something with them. Hopefully, get something ramped up so we could start in pre-production and then get something rolling next year. But as producers and people know, things there's waves. There's
Hmm.
times you're at the top, and then you got to be able to kind of ride the waves. And decision makers change in a lot of these instances, and also what the studios are looking for
Hmm.
changes. And besides Sony, I've done a lot of TV work with like Lifetime
Hmm.
and pitching um, Lifetime themselves, but also companies that have like a deal with them, which I could make movies for them, and then they sell to Lifetime. It just kind of depends. And then
That's exciting.
you have other projects you want to try to get independently financed if you can. You're always trying to look for money. So there's times where I will look independently to try to get movies made, and then you'd look to sell it afterwards.
Oh, that's exciting though. So you do a variety of all of that and everything. And I noticed that you mentioned how the landscape is forever changing in media, which
Yes.
we know there's a lot of acquisitions and people transition out of the jobs and everything. Could you give maybe an example of, being almost there with maybe landing a deal and then that person no longer works there? Because we have to
Yeah,
get,
that happens all the time. I mean, and look,
yeah.
that's a lot of other businesses too, because I mean, like if you're in sales or something and you're calling on a certain company, and then all of a sudden that person leaves, and then you got to kind of restart that relationship with somebody else.
Hmm.
Um, but that happens all the time. I mean, I've had projects that are ready to go, and then all of a sudden they're like, we spent our budget for the year, or
Oh,
we're
wow.
kind of going in a different direction. We're looking for these. That's why they say, like with movies, sometimes it takes like 5 to 10 years, which is a lot to get going. I mean, you look at some of the best TV series, like I think Breaking Bad was kind of floating around for like 7, 8 years before
The
that
same
got
for
done.
Squid Games, right? With
Yeah.
Netflix and everything. That one is
Yeah, and so
over
that's
a
kind
year.
of like that's as being a producer, you got to be prepared for that because you have to figure out you got to try to get these movies made, but then you got to figure out how you're going to maintain yourself in the meantime. And
Mhm,
unless you're independently wealthy, which a lot of people are when they come into Hollywood, I mean, you see them, they don't have to work at all. But if you have to work, then you have to figure out a way to supplement that, whether you're doing a different role. Um,
mhm,
you could get a job outside the business. It kind of depends. But that's kind of the balance and what you have to work with when you're trying to move forward in these projects. You just got to try to be able to stick it out as long as you can,
mhm,
because I think one thing a lot of people who get in the entertainment business from the outside, whether it's actors or whatever, they
mhm.
think it's like American Idol. They feel like they audition, they're going to be rich, and that's it. And that's not, 95% of the time, that's not what happens.
Mhm,
Um, because it takes time to, first of all, start to understand the business, and start to build relationships, because when you're dealing with people that are going to invest in you,
mhm,
that takes time. And if
mhm,
you look at it from their standpoint, if they don't know you at all and you haven't done anything, they're going to be like, well, I'm going I'm going to give you this amount of money. Why should I got to go with a more of a trusted source and stuff like that. So that's where you just got to be aware of. And I think a lot of that is just trying to maintain yourself and ride the
mhm.
wave.
And sometimes I do feel that way because, me and you, we have worked together before over at Sony. But like you said, a lot of the times with Hollywood, these kids come out of film school thinking like, hey, somebody's going to hand you a $5 million budget. You see it all the time of like, hey, this is $100 million film, and it's millions of dollars floating around. But a lot of times that is the challenge. Nobody's really going to hand you that amount of money without having some like validation behind it, right? So that
Yeah.
grind is definitely there, and unless you have those connections and all of that stuff already set into place, like you said. So,
Well, there's different ways to do it. It's obviously building connections, but there's been times where a person has made a short that is kind of a proof of concept for a feature.
mhm,
And like I think the first Saw, I think that was based on a short, and they made it. But the first Saw was not a lot of money. That wasn't like a huge budget movie, but it made a lot of money, and then it went from there.
mhm,
So once there's different ways to kind of sell yourself, so to speak, or to
mhm,
sell a project. And if you've done a really good short film or even a feature or a low budget feature that's good, then people are always looking for the kind of the up and coming filmmakers. That happens a lot. But if you look at like a lot of like Christopher Nolan and a lot of
yeah,
these directors that came, I mean, he did a movie called The Following, a really low budget.
yes,
Um, and then I think he might have done something before Memento. I don't know, but Memento was relatively low budget too. But it
mhm.
was a great script.
Yeah, now he's
Well,
doing what is that, Oppenheimer or
yeah,
whatever
I mean
that's coming out.
the guy's like the most sought after director in
Yeah,
Hollywood.
and
But
they
he's
always
also
make it like
extremely
a
talented.
major production similar to like remember back in the day with Michael Jackson videos, it was like
Yeah,
premiering on CBS. His countdowns and the entire
yeah,
build up and his marketing team behind him is really amazing and everything.
yeah.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. After starting my podcast, I needed to hire the pros to market the content. Are you looking for digital success? Look no further. World Boss HQ is your strategic partner. Their experts turn your vision into a digital masterpiece. From stunning websites to powerful marketing, they've got you covered. Startups or established businesses, they are your one-stop solution. Visit worldbosshq.com. That is WORLDBOSSHQ.com and unleash your potential today. World Boss HQ Digital Marketing. Your online empire awaits. We are excited to bring you this world exclusive teaser from Bad Rabbit Pictures and Movie Pods. They are presented Age of Prophecy, a sci-fi fantasy podcast done in the style of the radio dramas of yesteryear. Coming soon to all streaming platforms. Visit www.moviepods.com or www.anoukchronicles.com for all the release dates. You won't want to miss this one. Your myths were born from our history. Let's check it out.
Life. A vile, messy sequence of events before we die. All designed for something beyond us. It has to be. Or else, what's the point? You don't know me, but I know you. I am responsible for your triumphs and miseries. I am Zira Emilzor, and to truly understand your own story, you must know mine. Your myths were born from my history.
Hi there, and welcome back to Conversations with Filmmakers podcast. But going back to the sales portion, as a producer, how do you want people to actually approach you maybe with their content? Because that's something that's very important, right? There's ways like people probably send you pitch decks and all kinds of craziness. But if someone watching this was like, hey, I want to submit my stuff to Doug Shaffer because, I want to have a faith-based project or, something within that genre, what would you say to them? What's your style
different
of
producers,
approaching?
different producers have different
Their
rules.
style.
Like a lot of them will be like, you cannot submit an unsolicited screenplay, which means like if they're not asking for it or if it's not
Mhm.
submitted by an agency or a management, they're not interested. And a lot of times, as a producer, you got to be careful too, because if
Mhm.
somebody's submitting a project to you, typically you have them sign an NDA or whatever, so you don't want it. If they submit something and then you make a movie that's similar to what they submitted, you gotta be careful there
And
as a
that's something
producer. So you got to
and
be
that's
careful
something that
legally that
mhm.
yeah, you're just
Go
not
ahead.
taking it. I get a lot of requests from people.
Mhm.
Normally, to be honest with you, I ignore them because they are like something cut and pasted. It's like they don't know anything
Personalized.
about me. They're just trying to get to a producer. I'm like, well, I'm not wasting my time on this.
Yeah.
If somebody sends me though, like an email or it says, look, I have something I might be interested. If it looks interesting, I'll usually say, well, send me a log line and a summary. And
Mhm.
then if I want to read it, I'll let you know. And then, based on that summary, if it's something I'm looking for, um, I will I might ask to read the script because look, we're always looking for good scripts. You've got a good script, but you just got to make sure though too the script is, you know, get some feedback on the script, get it polished, things like that. Because I look for a couple of things. I look for the story, and
Mhm.
if I like it, but also if the writer's good, because
Mhm.
sometimes if the writer's really good, I might like, well, this story's not for me, but I'll use this person for
Mhm.
something else. And I've worked with, you know, WGA writers, non-WGA writers, all sorts. It just kind of depends. But if you're aspiring writer, just be open to that conversation, be open to making changes, be open to feedback.
Which is really excellent to say because a lot of times people just feel like approaching some entertainers is all about, we're only going for union writers, right? But you are open to non-union writers if it's quality stuff. So I think that's something major because, I myself, I'm a screenwriter and it's all about really packaging and being ready. You never want to tell someone, hey, I have this great script idea, and they're like, okay, let me read the script, and you don't have it, right? And I'm sure
Well,
you
yeah.
it's
Well,
like, okay,
well,
go
I
ahead.
think too, if I may,
No, absolutely.
up and coming writers, and this is specifically for them, you have to, okay, because a lot of writers from the outside, they kind of come in, and then again, they think if they're going to make a movie, they're going to get rich. And for the first movie, unless it's a big
Yes,
budget movie, I mean, if the movie's $100 million, and yeah, I mean, you're going to get paid. But if
yes.
it's like a $5 million movie, I mean, you would get paid, but you're not going to get, you know, a ton of. So just focus on getting your movie made,
Hmm.
because once that happens, especially if the movie turns out well, you have instant credibility,
Hmm.
and other producers can look for that. You can get representation, things like that. I'm assuming if a writer's coming to me like what we're talking about, they don't have representation, because I get a lot of that. But don't just you know but also, don't be taken advantage of, because there's producers out there
Hmm.
that will like not pay for an option and will want the option for like 7 years or something. You got to be mindful of that, because there's a lot of, you know, less than honest producers out there that, want material and would give you a bad deal. So you want to find a producer who's good and honest, and has a
What
lot of
should
industry.
be, not to interrupt you, but what should be some examples of things that people can do? Because we mentioned earlier, you mentioned the NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement, which is something that I think a producer would probably respect, or something if you were the one to approach it,
Yeah.
like, hey, are you going to sign an NDA?
Mhm.
Um, Another one, what would you suggest like people do? If you're doing a contract and stuff, maybe have an attorney or a legal
Yeah, no,
agent or
no, you
something
want
read
no,
over
no,
it, right? If you don't
you
have an
you
agent.
absolutely want to have. I mean, you want to have
Hmm.
somebody look that over. You
Hmm.
don't want to sign that blindly. Um, and you could pay. It's not that much if you just got a lawyer to look it over and say, "Hey, can you look this over and suggest changes and stuff like that?" An entertainment attorney, well, yeah, probably an entertainment attorney you want to go with.
Which I think
So,
is important.
but you'd want to make sure, and especially if you have an option, unless they're purchasing the rights outright, you know you don't want to keep that option, especially if you feel like your script is really good. You want to keep that term limited, or you put in like a shotgun clause, which is like after 6 months, if there's nothing really going on, I have the option to get out or something like that. Um,
Exactly. And this is
so
stuff
you
that
want to
the
protect yourself,
audience,
because if you
yeah.
spend all this time writing the script, you don't want one person to. I mean, usually, honestly, unless you're going, options are good, but there's always just shopping agreements,
Hmm.
which is you can do that with multiple producers, which is like, you can shop it out, and if you sell it, we're going to work together, but I'm going to go with other producers as well. And as a producer, I kind of like doing that too, just because when you're doing a straight option on material,
Hmm.
uh, I want to do what I can to get that movie made. But if I have a lot of stuff going on, I don't want to hold the writer up. Like, I'm like, look,
Hmm.
there's something else, I want you to be able to get that done, because
Hmm.
if it's only you and it's exclusive, then um you want to get that made. I just don't like holding writers up
Mhm.
if I have something else going on or multiple stuff. I don't want that to somehow stop them from just like yesterday I talked to a writer. I liked the concept of
Yeah.
her script. I said, I'm not ready to option this right now. I said, I'll give you my thoughts and notes, but I said, don't make any changes. Like, I'm not, I don't make it. These are what I would change. And if I were to option the material, I would ask that you change it, but don't make any changes because I'm giving you
Giving
my
my
notes.
opinion.
That's up to you. But I don't want you to feel like make these changes for free and then I'll option it, you know?
Mhm. So it's not giving anybody like false hope, like, hey, if you make
Yeah,
these changes,
I
I
just
can
don't like doing
definitely.
that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't like doing that. I don't like, um, because I want to be sure. I want to, make the movie and go out with it.
Exactly.
Now, an exciting message from our sponsors. When I decided to launch this podcast, I had the tools to find talent and market the show, but needed a skilled editor to bring it all to life. That's when I turned to Jacob Daly at redhawk.uk. His collaborative approach and swift revisions transformed my vision into reality. redhawk.uk, your one-stop solution for creative content services. Reach out to them. Now, a word from another of our supporting sponsors, that is Realm IQ, a new AI consultancy started by film marketing veteran Kurt Doty, who has built an international team of AI mentors to help AI change management for your business. Go to www.curtdoty.co/Realm IQ. Smart people for smart adoption, creating smart worlds. Realm IQ. Book your AI workshop today. Adopt or perish. Hi there, and welcome back to Conversations with Filmmakers podcast.
Now, one thing I wanted to ask you about as well, because you mentioned this earlier, is that you have a lot of balls up in the air sometimes. For Doug Shaffer, how much is like too much work for you, and how do you decompress? That's a very important thing. And I wanted to get into that because a lot of the times we are busy working, sometimes people are grinding 6, 7 days a week. So for you, do you have a cap on that, or do you just feel like you're able to schedule yourself well, or what is your technique as far as being a producer and
Well,
everything?
now I'll typically, your time as a producer, your time is very valuable. So and at some point you also do, like you said, you need to sometimes create space for yourself just for your own well-being. So you can't be like on 24-hour call. So I try to make it like at a certain point in the evening, I'm not going to have discussions past like 6 or 7. Like I won't have
Mhm.
any discussions. That's it. Like if somebody calls me at 8:30, I'm not going to pick up the phone. Um,
Setting limitations to your
yeah, and then
time, which
I'll
is
be
great.
very honest with you. I'll be like, look, I like this project. I'm not going to be able to give it my go because I have these other things kind of going on that I'm focused on.
Hmm.
So
And
um
let me ask you, how do you mentally and physically, take care of yourself in such a demanding industry as well? Is there any things like any outlets and everything? I know
just
that.
go for walks.
I know they are really great,
Just
aren't
go for
they?
walks. I don't, I try to go for, if I can, I try to go for like an hour or two a day and just
Hmm.
walk it. Like it's actually better for me because then you can, you're getting exercise, but you listen to podcasts or whatever.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's not as strenuous. I'm getting older now, so I can't do like
The
hardcore
P90
lifting and
expo.
stuff like that. I'm not going to do that.
You're too funny.
Plus, you can make phone calls if you're walking. You know
Exactly. You can do work at the same time, but not be as stressed, right? That's
exactly.
that's why I always enjoy it. Mine is driving. I just go
Yeah,
for the.
no, driving the same thing. Like I will make a lot of phone calls in the car and
Yeah.
try to get stuff done there. And yeah, that's a good thing to do too.
So you could wrap up your day, right?
Yep,
Well,
exactly.
let me ask you. I know that you mentioned you've been a producer for some time, but was this a changing of careers for you? Like, did you come from a different industry and then got
Yes,
into this? And what does that look like? Like, what made you make that transition?
I was actually my undergrad degree was in marketing, and
Mhm.
I worked for consumer, I worked in the power tool business for like 7 years or something
Hmm.
before I got into it, and I enjoyed it. I had fun, but it was kind of like one thing that kind of I didn't like, at least coming out of college. It felt like as soon as you got like your first like legit job, it felt like that was kind of the industry you had to stick in. And I was
Hmm.
just like, I like power, but I don't want to, I'm not like a guy who remodels his kitchen on his time off. Like that stuff doesn't. I never was the type of guy who would like to. I don't consider myself a handy person. I liked power tools, but that type of stuff never on my free time I was into. I've
Yeah.
always been into film, and I found in my free time when I was working there, I was working on stuff, editing,
Mhm.
writing, doing all sorts of different things. But I reached a point, I'm like, I don't really know how to get it. And this is back in the early 2000s. So
Mhm.
I was like, how am I going to, I'm not just going to quit my job and move to LA just with nothing. So I
Yeah.
applied to film schools, and luckily I got into the film producing program at AFI, American
Okay,
Film
fine.
Institute. So that's what propelled it. And I was lucky because I actually wanted to go in as a director, but I had no
Mhm.
experience. Um,
Mhm.
and my background fit more of a producer background because it's like, a lot of project management and stuff like that. And so it kind of really fit well. And I'm actually glad I did that, because at first I was like, well, I want to direct, and I could always still direct if I want, but I
Yes.
don't, but after being through it, I don't think I would be comfortable directing. Not that I don't think I could do it, but with everything that goes on set and
Mhm.
issues and stuff like that, I think I would get too distracted uh, with other stuff. Like if they weren't happening, I think of it, because when you're directing, you got to be able to really concentrate. You can't be, you know, you can't be, you know, you're going to get outside pressure, but you try to keep everything insulated so you could do the best possible work you can, working with directors, working with your DP, stuff like that.
Mhm.
So you can't have like, oh my god, like, you know um we're having problems with transportation, the actors aren't getting here in time, or makeup, there's some delay. Like you
Yes.
don't want to hear, like, you don't you don't really want
You
to
have to
deal.
be in that bubble with like your camera
Yeah,
people, your
you just don't want to
DP.
like, and as a producer, I, I will demand certain things from the director, but I typically always let them work, because I feel
Mhm.
like they're going to do the best job if they're relaxed and they feel like, you know, um, they're
No one's
protected.
bothering them.
Yeah, well, they're just protected, because
Yeah.
there's some producers that'll like watch like a hawk over the directors and be like, "Well, you got to do this, do that." It's like I will make suggestions or be like, "Hey, did we get this? Like, what did we get out of the scene? Did you get this?" Like,
Mhm.
and uh, I'll ask if, you know, what this, direct. I work with, lots of female and male directors, but what how many shots are we getting off, stuff like that,
Yeah.
in the
But you
day,
just
because you
pretty
want to make
much
sure
are
it comes.
letting them be creative.
Yeah, and then if I find out, like, my editor says, hey, can you ask them for more close-ups, I need more close-ups, I'll go, hey, shoot some more close-ups.
But that's
And
good to hear though, because I know for myself, I've been a project manager before, and being on a film set, even recently as like just a standard PA and stuff, I was like a spinning top, but I loved it.
yeah.
It's like
Oh
you're
no, it's intense.
multitask.
It's like a locomotive. That's the thing about making movies.
Yeah,
You can't stop it. It goes. So you have to be able to,
no, but I
like,
loved
solve
it
problems as
though.
you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I
it's
just
fun, and
love
the
it.
energy level is like poof, and you meet a lot of good friends. I mean, it's a fun time. As a producer, it's fun, but I like pre and post production better because
Ah,
but
really?
production to me is more stressful because more things go wrong. You're like, because in pre and especially post, you can control the cost a lot more, so you're not like,
Mhm.
but when things start happening on set, then you got to be like, okay, if something happens and we don't have the budget for it, how are we going to make up for that? type of thing.
Yeah.
So, and you got to make
So
sure
you
you have
guys,
enough money in
your
place.
bread and butter is post and pre-production, pretty much.
Well, that's what I enjoy most, because I like, just because I feel that, especially when editing, that's a lot of fun. Like, that's a
Mhm.
lot of fun, and even doing the music and stuff is really fun.
Ah, but that's excellent though, and that's something nice for the audience to hear as well, because not everybody wants to be, on set and everything like that. So to know, like,
Oh, I'm on
producers,
set. I mean, I'm on set. I don't
but you
lead
know what
set,
I
but
mean.
but
You
I'm
know what I
saying, like,
mean.
I
But you
you know,
don't have to be, is what I'm saying. Like, I know some producers, I met a few, and they're more like in the office, with the post production stuff, already
yeah,
getting it
and
started and
and
everything, and going through scripts and all kinds of stuff. So.
and look, as a producer too, if you have multiple projects going on, there's going to be times you're going to have to deal with another project
Hmm.
at some point. So it just kind of depends, because I usually do one, and I'm there the whole time through pre-post, and I kind of am, which something I have to learn to do a better job of, is to kind of lay off the gas a little bit and go to other projects.
You've just tuned into an episode of Conversations with Filmmakers podcast. We'd like to thank our guests for joining us and sharing their knowledge. This has been a production of Vonti Pictures, hosted by me, Vonti McCrae, a screenwriter and producer. We'd also like to thank Bad Rabbit Pictures for the animated content and creator of upcoming podcast Age of Prophecy, along with our sponsor, redhawk.uk, with all episodes being edited by Jacob Daly, director, producer, and a man of many talents. Come back next week as this saga continues for the Conversations with Filmmakers podcast.